Hi, Taryn. I would like to present my bulletproofs and understanding of this wonderful epic work of art by Aristotle called Poetics. Uh, Even though we never got an actual book, we only got the notes, which might be just his notes for public speaking. We still very much cherish those extremely valuable notes by Aristotle, who was the French philosopher and scientist who was born in Macedonia in 300 84 BC, and then he studied in Athens with Pluto, another famous philosopher. And I actually remember very vividly this fresco, this painting by Raphael, which is in Vatican in Capella Sistina. It's a huge, beautiful painting, and Aristotle walks next to Pluto, and they argue about something. So they had very different ideas, even though they've been together for 20 years. I didn't mean that they were together, but Aristotle studied under Pluto for 20 years, and Pluto was very much against art because he was feeling like life is already an imitation of something greater, and art would be just an imitation on the imitation. So some believe that Aristotle's Poetics is kind of a response to Pluto's Republic. So anyway, long story short, Aristotle, who was Greek, who was born in Macedonia, which was a part of Greece at that time, he was very well-rounded. And so, what interests us is poetics. And again, we don't know exact details, but we do believe that there were two books on tragedy, one on tragedy, one on comedy. But we only get notes for tragedy. And this is extremely important for the whole theater world because Romans based their theater art on Aristotle's Poetics. And then in medieval times, like French neoclassicism, earlier theater, they all were basing their work on Aristotle, and of course Shakespeare, and of course nowadays we still based it on Aristotle's Poetics. So I'm just going to summarize for you and for myself. Of course, thank you again for bringing this knowledge to me. It's been so extremely important. Most important part of Aristotle's Poetics is that he created six components of tragedy, and they go in order of importance. So number one important for Aristotle is the plot. So the plot is actually the action, what is happening. So the story goes not through narratives, not through the dialogues, but through the actions. So plot has to have beginning, middle, and end, and it should have an actual ending. It should not be any unanswered questions, any hanging situations. So very clear um, plot, very captivating, something of a big magnitude. So we would watch and we will be amazed, which takes us to the second aspect, which is character. Character in Aristotle's time, again, it has to be someone above average Joe, someone who will inspire, someone strong, someone of like a royalty or something. But the person should not be perfect because that's the flaws which he will need to overcome during the period of peace. So the third component of Aristotle's poetics is thought or idea. So it has to be one sort of story, moral idea which unites the whole piece. Then number four of the elements, and it goes in order of importance, is diction or language. So language should be beautiful, maybe poetic, maybe prosaic, but it has to be nice and pleasurable. Number four is melody and music. And when we talk about music, it's not necessarily only music. It can be the sounds of the bottles. It can be the rhythm of the play, how it's written. And number six, of course, for you, Terrain, is most important. It's the spectacle, because I know you love props and set design. So that's all about visual aspect, visual component, movement, set, lighting. It's all comes to number six, which is spectacle. But again, for Aristotle, that was least important. He encouraged playwrights do not rely on spectacle, but mostly focus on plot and character. And if we want to compare briefly Roman and Greek theater, so for Romans, character was more important than the plot. And the main idea, which comes from Greek theater, from Aristotle's Poetics, is catharsis. And when we are, as viewers, watching this performance, we have build up of those emotions, and mostly it's fear or pity. And then when this release happens, we experience in this purification or purge from those emotions. So this was important to Aristotle. This was an important concept for him, versus in Roman time that was not that important. So they were applauding to stoicism, to bravery. So they would be suppressed emotions, right? So catharsis comes from Aristotle and Greek theater. And it's very important because nowadays we use it in psychology. So Aristotle's Poetics is important not only for theater and literature, but even for psychology, right? How important the release of the fear, the release of the pity, of those emotions. So when we go to theater, it's kind of therapeutic, right? So we know this. So catharsis is one of the aspects, important elements which Aristotle brings in. So his other element is recognition and reversal. Recognition is when the character finally realizes, for example, like in Oedipus Rex, when he realizes that the prophecy is already fulfilled, right? So this is recognition, but it can be preceded by a few reversals when we as viewers see that he should get it by now, but no, he still doesn't. So that makes recognition more dramatic, altogether. And then another element which is extremely important for Aristotle, and again we see in neoclassical French theater, they were very strictly following it, versus other places can use it to, like Cinderella for example, can use it to make the story more interesting and driven. So it's the unity of three: time, place, and action. Meaning, so the whole story has to be in one day, preferably 24 hours. Place, it's in the same place, the action is not moving place to place, not leaving, not coming back. And uh, action, so it has to have some idea, we have one storyline, one main storyline, and not drifting to any side stories. And another um, aspect of Aristotle's Poetics is Hamartia. We used to think of it as a fatal flaw, like, for example, Hamlet being lazy, but now we look at it as an error or mistake. For example, again in Hamlet, his Hamartia or mistake was not killing that evil uncle earlier, right? So that's when all the fuss was about. And so, yes, to summarize the Aristotle's Poetics, it is an extremely valuable piece of art, and of course, it's written in an ancient language, so it's a lot of difficulties in translating. But nevertheless, I am very grateful you introduced us to this piece, and I have this valuable knowledge, and it will definitely help me in analyzing the theater plays and other pieces of writing.